All right, let's get right into it. We're going to talk about one of the most incredible stories in all of music history, how a family from Gary, Indiana, became this absolute global phenomenon. And maybe just as importantly, we're going to look at how their story was first officially told to the world.
This quote from Jermaine Jackson, man, it really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? For millions of people, the Jackson story just kind of starts with their first big hit. But the family, they wanted everyone to see the journey, the struggle, and the life they had before all the superstardom. This right here was the whole idea behind that landmark 1992 miniseries that really defined their origin story for a generation. And this was it, a huge 5-hour television event that aired over 2 nights. I mean, think about that. The Jacksons' An American Dream wasn't just some movie. It was this massive, family-approved saga based on their own mother, Catherine's book. It pretty much became the definitive telling of their rise from a gritty steel town to the absolute top of the pop music world. But way before Hollywood and the TV movies, the story started in a much, much different place. So let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the industrial town of Gary, Indiana. This is where that American dream really began. Not on a stage, but right here, in this small, crowded 2-bedroom house. You had Joseph Jackson working at the steel mill, trying to support Catherine and their 9 kids. It's from these incredibly humble, working-class roots that one of music's greatest dynasties would somehow, unbelievably, emerge. Now, you can't tell this story without talking about the man at the center of it all, their father, Joe Jackson. And wow, what an incredibly complicated figure. On one hand, he was the visionary, right? It was his dream, his relentless drive that literally forged the Jackson 5. But on the other hand, his methods were famously harsh. We're talking about grueling, nonstop rehearsals, and as we'd later learn, he was often abusive, using corporal punishment to get them to be perfect. He was both the architect of their success and the source of some really deep, lasting family pain. And that intense drive, it got results, and it got them fast. The group forms in '64, and by '67, they're already cutting singles for local label Steeltown Records. But the huge, life-changing leap comes in 1968. They get spotted by a Motown artist named Bobby Taylor. They go audition in Detroit, and by March of '69, boom, they've signed an exclusive 7-year contract with the most famous record label in America. Now, signing with Motown, this wasn't just a record deal. No way. This was like getting the golden ticket. You were becoming a part of Hitsville, USA. You were entering this finely tuned hit-making factory that had a proven formula for turning talented kids into absolute superstars. And the head of that factory, Berry Gordy, he saw the potential instantly. I mean, this quote says it all. He didn't just see a cute kid group. He saw the future. And he especially recognized the electrifying, just once-in-a-generation talent of the group's youngest member, Michael. Gordy knew this was the beginning of something that was going to be huge. See, Motown left absolutely nothing to chance. Their famous artist development program was a well-oiled machine. First, they crafted the image. They even created this famous story that Diana Ross had discovered them, just to add a little extra stardust. Then they created the sound, putting together a special team of songwriters just to write their hits. And finally, they polished every single detail, from their dance moves to what they needed on tour. It was total systematic star building.
So, what happens when you take all that meticulous planning and you combine it with just raw, undeniable talent? Well, you get an explosion of popularity that America had really never seen before. A true phenomenon.
4. That's it, just one number. But in the history of pop music, this number is legendary. Why? Because the Jackson 5 became the very first group in history to have their first 4 singles go straight to number 1. The first 4. Just unbelievable. And these were the songs that did it. I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There. One after another, they just shot to the top of the charts and became the soundtrack for a whole generation. This string of hits launched a global phenomenon that the press started calling Jackson Mania. I mean, you have to imagine, their lives were transformed basically overnight. They went from being unknown kids in Gary to selling out huge arenas like the Forum in LA. The crowds were so massive and so wild that these kids needed police escorts just to get through. It was a true global sensation, and right at the center of it all was this magnetic little kid with an incredible voice.
Which, brings us right back to where we started, that 1992 miniseries that was trying to capture this incredible lightning-in-a-bottle journey for millions of people watching on TV.
So here's the quick breakdown of the whole thing. It aired on ABC, massive project, totally family approved, since it was based on their mom's book. But look at that last row there, the timeline. It covers everything from their parents' meeting in the 1940s, but then it just stops in 1984 with the Victory Tour. And trust me, that was a very, very specific choice. So why stop there, right? I mean, the family's story obviously didn't end in 1984. Well, this specific endpoint was chosen because it really represented the end of one era and the official start of a whole new one. It was a huge turning point for the family, both as a group and as individuals. And this quote from the producers explains it perfectly. The Victory Tour was seen as the absolute peak for the Jacksons as a group. It was the last time all the brothers would tour together like that. It also represented a moment of healing for the family. And maybe most importantly, it was the tour that came right after Michael's Thriller, which basically cemented his status as a solo superstar and marked the end of the Jackson 5 era for good. So, An American Dream gave us this triumphant, inspiring, family-approved version of their story. It really cemented their legacy as a perfect American success story. But by ending at that high point in 1984, it also set the stage for all the other stuff, all the more complex, the more controversial, and the more challenging chapters of the Jackson saga that were still to come. We all know the moonwalk, this single glittery glove, the iconic silhouette. But today, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the actual process. We're going to deconstruct the creative genius behind Michael Jackson's masterpieces and find out how they were really made. I mean, think about it. We can all sing along to Billie Jean or Thriller, right? But do we have any idea how those songs actually came to be? It wasn't just some bolt of lightning. No, it was this unique, fascinating, and incredibly disciplined process. So let's break that down, from the very first spark of an idea all the way to that final polished record. So where did it all start? For Michael Jackson, it began in a place that he always described as, well, deeply spiritual. He really believed he wasn't so much a writer of songs, but more of a channel for them. Now, this quote is amazing. It comes from a super rare deposition he gave in 1993, where he had to explain under oath how he writes music. And he said that songs would just arrive, fully formed from what he felt was a divine source. So for him, it wasn't about trial and error. It was all about being ready to catch that idea when it fell. And this is where his method gets truly mind-blowing. Unlike almost any other songwriter, Jackson didn't write songs on paper. He didn't sit at a piano and work out the chords. As he testified, the entire composition, and I mean every single part, would just appear in his head all at once. His first move? Grab a tape recorder. He would then lay down the entire track using nothing but his voice. He'd beatbox the drum patterns, hum the bass line, sing the string arrangements, and of course, sing the melody. It was a complete oral blueprint for a #1 hit. Okay, so you have this raw, vocal-only demo on a cassette tape. How in the world do you get from that to the huge, widescreen sound we all know and love? Well, that transition required a true partner in crime, the legendary sound engineer Bruce Swedien. For years, fans would see the acosonic recording process in the album liner notes and wonder, what is that? Some secret electronic gadget? Nope, not at all. It was Swedien's absolutely brilliant method of linking multiple tape machines together. Now, you gotta remember, back then, a single 24-track tape was the hard limit for most studios. This was a total game changer. It gave them a basically limitless sonic canvas to paint on, letting them layer sound after sound to create that iconic, spacious hall of sound that became their signature. You see, for Michael Jackson, singing was never just about his vocal cords. It was a full-body performance, always. Bruce Swedien famously said that even in the studio with no cameras, no audience, Michael was in constant motion, and Sweden didn't try to stop him. He decided to capture it. And this is just a perfect example of their collaboration. Swedien literally built this special plywood platform for Michael to dance on while he sang. He'd stick microphones under it, and all those stomps, snaps, and footsteps, they became part of the song's percussion. If you ever get a chance to listen to the multitracks of a song like Earth Song, you can actually hear his feet tapping on that wood, baked right into the rhythm of the final song. Now, at a time when most producers were compressing everything to make it as loud as possible, Swedien went in the complete opposite direction. He wanted to preserve the natural dynamics of the music. He was obsessed with what he called transient information, that initial crack of a snare drum or the little pop of a vocal hiccup. He felt compression just squashed all that excitement, so he refused to use it. And that's a big reason why those records have such incredible punch and clarity. But of course, right in the center of that incredible hall of sound was the main event, the ultimate instrument, Michael Jackson's voice. And let me tell you, while it sounded completely effortless, the reality was anything but.
You know, we have this myth about legendary singers, that they just open their mouths and pure perfection flows out. The reality for Michael, though, was a world of intense discipline. His team said he never just winged it. Every single vocal session was preceded by an hour-long warm-up with a vocal coach. He learned every lyric by heart so he wouldn't need a sheet in front of him. And that idea of the one perfect take? Yeah, that's a total myth. Here's a little industry secret. It's called the comp track, short for composite. Even an unbelievable talent like Michael would sing a song dozens and dozens of times. The engineers would then go back and listen to every single take, picking the absolute best performance of a single word from take 5, a perfect phrase from take 12, maybe even just one perfect syllable from take 23, and then they'd stitch it all together. It creates one flawless composite performance. It just goes to show you, the perfect vocal you hear isn't just talent captured in a moment, it's a masterpiece constructed over time.
And when you zoom in on his voice, you find this incredible toolbox of techniques he had mastered. Vocal analysts who've gone through his multi-tracks point out things like his sheepish vibrato on ballads, where he'd pull back his support to make it sound vulnerable. He was also a master of the exit. I mean, listen to a song like Man in the Mirror. He never just lets a note die, he ends it with purpose, with a little flourish. And then you had these lightning-fast, gritty, bluesy riffs that he'd just toss in, so quick and complex you could barely even catch them. So, when you put this all together, what do you really get? You get a process that is equal parts mystical inspiration and just relentless, methodical hard work.
This timeline really nails the whole journey. It starts with the idea, that divine spark he talked about. Then it moves to the oral demo, where he gives it its first shape. Next, you enter the studio, where Bruce Swedien becomes a sonic architect. After that, it's that painstaking process of vocal layering and perfection. And only when all those stages are complete do you finally get the masterpiece. It's really about these two seemingly opposite ideas constantly working together. On one hand, you have the beautiful spiritual image of catching a song like a falling leaf. And on the other hand, you have the raw, physical reality of him stomping on a wooden board just to make sure his dance moves became part of the rhythm track. Nothing was an accident. And that kind of brings us to the big final thought here. Michael Jackson was, without question, one of the most talented performers in history. But as we've seen, that talent was the starting point, not the finish line. The real magic, the fire in his work that's lasted all these years, it seems like it was built on a foundation of incredible discipline, wild innovation, and an obsessive attention to every single detail. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Where does talent end, and where does technique begin? Today, we're digging into a moment that didn't just change music, it caused a cultural earthquake. Michael Jackson's Thriller. We're going to go way beyond the video to look at the massive ambition, the crazy risks, and the pure creative genius that made it all happen. You see, this thing wasn't just a music video, right? It was a full-on 14-minute horror epic that completely redefined the game. But before we get to the zombies and that unforgettable red jacket, we have to start at the beginning, with the incredibly ambitious goal for the album itself.
All right, so first up, the whole philosophy that drove this project was this idea of every song a killer. This was a commitment to pure quality that honestly was pretty much unheard of back then.
I mean, this quote says it all. It perfectly captures Michael Jackson's mindset. He was just done with albums that had filler tracks. So he and the legendary producer Quincy Jones set out with this mission to make an album where every single song could be a smash hit. And the result? Oh yeah, they pulled it off. Thriller wasn't just a chart topper, it was Jackson's very first #1 album. And it didn't just break records, it completely obliterated them to become the best-selling album of all time. A title, by the way, it still holds to this day. Okay, so the album is an absolute monster success. But then comes the spark, the moment that would launch Michael Jackson into a whole other galaxy of superstardom. And it all came down to one single electrifying performance on television. Now, here's the wild part when you look at the history. The move we all know as the moonwalk had actually been around for decades. It was called the backslide. You can trace it all the way back to performers like Cab Calloway in the 1930s. But when Jackson unleashed it during Billie Jean at the Motown 25 special, it was like the entire world had never seen anything like it. He made it his, instantly.
And, Jackson himself was always really humble about it. In that famous Oprah interview from '93, He gave all the credit to the kids on the street, saying they were the ones who really invented it. He just enhanced it. But wow, what an enhancement, right? It became his forever signature.
So the album's a juggernaut. The moonwalk is a global phenomenon, but Michael wasn't even close to finished. For the title track, Thriller, he and his team decided to basically tear up the rulebook and take a huge creative and financial gamble. So, get this. You're the biggest pop star on earth. What do? You just pick up the phone and call a big-time Hollywood director. Jackson had just seen John Landis's horror comedy, An American Werewolf in London, and his request was pretty simple. He wanted Landis and his makeup artist Rick Baker to turn him into a monster. And this chart really shows you just how insane their idea was. I mean, look at the difference. Your average music video in '83 was, 3 minutes long, shot on videotape for maybe 50 grand? They were planning a 14-minute short film shot on actual 35mm film with a real story for 10 times the normal budget. It was completely unheard of. But here's the crucial twist. The record label said no, flat out. According to Landis, the head of CBS Records basically told them to get lost. The album was already selling millions, so why on earth would they spend another $500,000? And this is the moment Jackson put his own money down, a huge bet that was luckily covered later by selling the rights to a making-of documentary. Okay, so Section 4, the spectacle. They had the money, and now it was time to create those monsters, those dance moves, and that style that would make Thriller absolutely unforgettable. This is where the real movie magic came in. Oscar winner Rick Baker put together a massive makeup team. And just look at the process for turning Michael into the Werecat. We're talking custom latex bladders glued right onto his face, foam pieces over that, layers of hair, special paint, and then those terrifying yellow cat eye contacts to finish it off. Just an incredible amount of work.
And then, of course, there's the jacket. This was no accident. Every little detail was planned. The designer, Deborah Nodelman Landis, chose that super bright candy apple red so Jackson would pop in the darkness. And those sharp V-stripes and structured shoulders, that was all to make him look more powerful, more virile. It wasn't just a costume. It became a global fashion statement overnight.
And finally, you have the dance. Choreographer Michael Peters, the same genius behind Beat It, created the zombie dance. And I love what he told the dancers. He was totally upfront, like, look, this is not a glamour gig. It's going to be uncomfortable makeup and dentures and long, grueling hours. And all that hard work paid off in one of the most famous dance sequences ever. So now we get to our final section, the legacy. When Michael Jackson's Thriller finally premiered on December 2nd, 1983, it wasn't just a video debut. It was a complete cultural reset.
The shockwaves were immediate, and they were permanent. Thriller pretty much single-handedly elevated the music video into a serious art form. It helped smash racial barriers at MTV, forcing them to play more black artists. It even popularized the whole making-of documentary idea. It didn't just change the rules. It created a whole new level of what a pop superstar could be.
And remember that red jacket? Well, in 2011, one of the originals worn by Jackson in the video went to auction and is sold for this absolutely mind-blowing amount, cementing its place not just as memorabilia, but as a real piece of history.
So it all brings us to this one question. What is the most famous music video of all time? Well, it turns out the answer isn't just a matter of opinion or a popularity contest, it's a matter of official record.
Because in 2009, Thriller made history all over again. It became the very first music video ever to be inducted into the National Film Registry. The Library of Congress itself called it the most famous music video of all time, preserving it forever. It was the ultimate proof that the wild, ambitious plan to make a killer album and a blockbuster short film had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams.